Welcome one and all, Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Land, Holy Apple, Holy Hilltop. We are on the 17th day of the month of Shvat, 5780. I hope everyone had a meaningful and sweet, pardon the pun, 15th of Shvat, to be Shvat. Okay, today we have a very, very special class, and I can tell you that in the last couple of weeks, I've gone over hundreds of books, and I think this is the first class of its type that exists in the globe. So it's an honor to be able to bring this down to all our viewers, all our listeners. Title of the class today is February 18, 2020. Are you ready? February 18, 2020. Are you ready? This special class that we will delve into today has many, many ramifications on our living, on our Jewish foundation. Okay, so there seems to be a contradiction, a big time contradiction. If we open up on one side of the spectrum, we have the Code of Jewish Law by Rabbi Yosef Cairo of Tzfat, Safed, and he writes in the Code of Jewish Law, Orach Chaim 580, paragraph 2. He writes to us that on the 23rd day of Shvat, which is in 6 days, this year, February 18th, 2020, comes out, there are certain Jews that fast on this day. It's a voluntary fast. It's not mandatory. So you don't have to get worried and start sweating. Oh my God, have to fast. I know that fasting is not an easy thing for many, many Jews who enjoy eating. So we see very clearly in the Code of Jewish Law that this day is a fast day. Bad things apparently happened on this date. What's the bad thing? It says in the Code of Jewish Law that on the 23rd day of Shvat, the Jewish people gathered in a certain meeting place and decided to do battle against the tribe of Binyamin, and as a result of this battle, there were approximately 70,000 casualties. Amazing number. On the other hand, which seems pretty contradictory, we see in the Esther Rabbah, which is a part of the famous Midrash Rabbah of our sages, the work of our sages, chapter 7, verse 11. It's very easy to remember. If you've ever been to 7-Eleven, that's how you could remember it easily. It says the following, an amazing insight to the holiday which is less than a month away, Purim. It says the following, that Haman, he was looking for a good month. Actually, he was looking for a bad month that the Jewish people were suffering in the past. Historically, he was looking for a bad month for the Jewish people in order that would be good for him in order to annihilate the Jewish people. So he goes through the months and he sees various months have various merit to them. So he says, no, it's not a good month to blow away the Jews. So he goes through the months and then he gets to the month, our month, the month of Shvat. And he says, no way, I'm not going to attack the Jewish people, I'm not going to annihilate them in the month of Shvat. Why? Because there is a merit to this month. What is the merit of this month? The merit of this month is when the Jewish people got together in order to fight against the tribe of Benjamin. Whoa, it's like, what's going on over here? You tell me, it says in the Code of Jewish Law that this is a day of sorrow, a day of fasting. On the other hand, our sages tell us during the time of Purim, this was established, that this is a time to rejoice that this month of Shvat that we are presently in, it has a tremendous merit that the Jewish people decided to go to war against the tribe of Benjamin. So first, in order to really appreciate this contradiction, should the Jewish people have gone to war against one another? Not. In order to appreciate it, we have to go back. We have to step back and go back to the book of Judges. We're talking about chapters 19 and 20. I will summarize the events that took place. There happens to be a man from the tribe of Levi, Levites. And by the way, I just found out a couple of days ago that an amazing story. My grandfather of blessed memory passed away at a very early age. I never met him in my life. His name was Moshe Richter. And my grandfather, if you would look at him, he did not appear as a religious person. But listen to this. In the early 1900s in America, it was almost impossible to keep the Sabbath. Because if you were Jewish and you kept the Sabbath, when Sabbath came and you didn't show up to work, not like today where there's a five-day work week. No, then you had to work on Sabbath. So if you didn't come in, let's say you'd say, I'm sick. So the next week, and also you're sick, you're only sick on Saturdays, you know, like pretty funky. So you would be fired. So many religious Jews worked on Sabbath. Many didn't, and they had tremendous sacrifice. In fact, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein writes in his book of Jewish laws, he said that these people had tremendous sacrifice for the Jewish people and for the commandments of God. He has a certain question. It's not our issue right today, which he was asked, and then he gets into that discussion about that generation of people. I mean, there are people that decorate their sukkah every year. They have these pink slips. What's a pink slip? Every Sunday when they came to work, they would get this pink slip, which means, baby, you're fired. And so as a decoration, they were so proud of the fact that they stood up against all odds, against all pressure. And even though it was financially very, very difficult, dire straits, these tremendous minority of Jews stood up and said, we will not work on Saturdays, on the Jewish Sabbath. Tremendous amount of sacrifice for these people. They had families, they had children to feed. But they took it to the limit. They went all the way to the touchdown zone. Anyway, so that's how they would decorate their sukkah. Every year they would save these pink slips where they were fired, and they were so proud of that they were able to stand up. So, it turns out that I just learned this a few days ago, that my grandfather, Moshe Richter, even though externally he did not look like a religious person, he refused to work on Sabbath. He refused to work on Sabbath, and he was fired. For any job that he did, he was fired. And he was a very, very poor man. And he had a family. So that's an amazing thing. I was really proud to hear that my grandfather had tremendous sacrifice for the Sabbath. But Not only that, listen to this. We were talking about the tribe of the Levites. So eventually, my grandfather found a job where? At the Levi Strauss company. You know, the Levi's, the pants? Turns out that the Richter family is related to the Levi Strauss family. So I don't know, I don't have any Levi's, but I'm going to look into it. Maybe I have some reduction, they'll give me a discount over here now that I'm part of the, Levi's family. Okay, so back to the story of the Torah. So this man from the tribe of the Levites, he married a woman from the tribe of Judah. And they had some marital problems, and they went to the wife's father, the husband's father-in-law. And eventually they worked things out, and when they finally did work things out and they got back together, happy ending, so it was very late, and they had to decide where they were going to call it a night. It wasn't like today where there's electricity, there's lights. So they decided to go into a city or community. It doesn't tell us how many people there were present, but a community that was populated by the tribe of Benjamin. And they walk into this community and they need some help because they don't have a place to stay. They need a place, they need some food. So nobody is inviting them into their home, except for one old-timer. He sees this, nobody's inviting them inside, and he says, come inside my house, and he's very kind to them. Eventually, later on, some hours later in the evening, the house is surrounded by members of the Benjamin tribe. What are they demanding? Why are they surrounding this house? It ain't the SWAT team. They're surrounding the house. They're demanding that this old-timer, this old man, give over the husband to the inhabitants outside in order to perform same-sex acts. Now, this old man comes outside and he pleads with them, please, he's my guest, I don't want to, please leave him alone. Eventually what happens is that the husband, if you can believe this, the husband goes out and he takes his wife and he says, here, instead of himself, so he offers his wife. They take him up on the offer, and she's raped multiple times. Eventually, she succumbs to her wounds and she passes away, she dies. The husband, in order to awaken the Jewish people, except for the tribe of Benjamin, of course, he takes her body and cuts it up into 12 pieces and sends a piece of her dead body to every tribe in order to infuriate them to see, look what's happening here. Look at what kind of immoral sexual behavior is going on here in this community of the tribe of Benjamin. So the Jewish people are infuriated. They come together in a meeting place. There are hundreds of thousands of Jews that are gathered together. They cannot believe what just happened here. Both the sin of homosexuality and both the rape of this woman. It wasn't just rape, it was like a gang rape. So at first they decided, they went to representatives of the tribe of Benjamin and they said, listen, let's end this thing quick. How are we going to do that? give over to us, to our court, give over to us the perpetrators of this crime, of these crimes. Whoever was responsible for these crimes, those that surrounded the building, or those that gave them support, or whatever it might have been, we just hand them over and we'll finish the whole story. The tribe of Benjamin refuses to hand over any of the perpetrators of these crimes. Okay, so it's time to go to battle. It's time to go to battle. And Benjamin prepares his troops. There are 26,700 fighters in the army of Benjamin. There are 400,000 soldiers in the army of the people of the other tribes of Israel. Okay? The Jewish people go, the tribes of Israel, except for Benjamin, of course, they go and they ask the Urim v'Tumim. Urim v'Tumim was the high priest. He had a breastplate, and within the breastplate there was a folded area material, and inside that folded material was a very sacred name of God. And when they had questions, they would go before the high priest, and different things. Urim comes from the word light. Tumim comes from the word tam is complete. So they would get an answer what to do if they had a question. So the question that the Jewish people ask the high priest and the Urim v'Tumim is, who should lead the battle? They didn't ask, notice, they did not ask if they should go out to battle. They asked who should lead the battle. And the Urim v'Tumim replied that, like always, the tribe of Judah would lead the battle. They were always the first. They were on the frontline soldiers. Okay, so they go out and they fight. And believe it or not, against all odds, Benjamin, in the first round, round one, are able to kill 40,000 of the other tribes. Benjamin kills 40,000, okay, Jewish soldiers from the other tribes. Amazing. So they go unhurt, unscarred, and the Jewish people who are fighting against this immoral behavior, immoral sexual behavior, they lose. The good guys lose. Okay. Round two. Once again, this time, Benjamin is able to kill 18,000 members of the other tribes. So it's an amazing number. We have now 58,000 from the various tribes of Israel that have been killed by this small unit of fighters, 26,700 of Benjamin. Okay, and it's time for round three. They, once again, the Jewish people, they turn to the Urim v'Tumim, the special way of finding out what they should be doing, and they ask for the third time. I didn't mention it the second time, but this was the third time they're asking, should they continue fighting? And God responds positively that they should continue fighting. God gives the green light to continue fighting. So round three, it looked good at the beginning. For Benjamin, they killed 30 more people of Israel, the various tribes of Israel. However, then the tables turned on them. And then the Jewish people of the other tribes succeeded in killing 25,100 members of Benjamin, which means that there was only 1,600 left. And there's various opinions amongst our sages that those 1,000 of these 1,600 people that were left in Benjamin, they escaped to different parts of the world. There's a dispute exactly what part of the world they ended up. Today we have no idea of where they ended up or where they are. So we basically were left with 600 men from Benjamin. 1,000 escaped, and we're left with 600 alive, and the rest are dead. Amazing. The last link in this battle is the inhabitants of a place called Yavesh Gilad. The tribes of Israel punished them because they did not, when all of the tribes were summoned to meet and discuss and deliberate what to do against the tribe of Benjamin, after they refused to hand over the perpetrators of these immoral crimes, there was one community that didn't show up, people of Yavesh Gilad. So the last fall here is the approximately 4,000 people of the community of Yavesh Gilad were killed by the tribes of Israel. So altogether, if you do the math, it's approximately 70,000 people in this whole mess. So we can understand, at least it seems like this is a good enough reason for us to fast on the 23rd day of Shvat, because this whole domino theory, it started with a community of Benjamin, and then the other tribes got involved, and this whole domino theory, which spun out of control, we can understand why it's written in the Code of Jewish Law that this is a day that a person should do their best to try to fast. On the other hand, we can't understand what in the world is going on here. How come, on the other hand, our sages tell us that this was a day of merit for the Jewish people. In fact, Haman was afraid to attack the Jewish people because of the merit of the month of Shvat, when the Jewish people went to battle the tribe of Benjamin. What's going on over here? Why is that a merit when so many people were killed? Okay, that's the background. There are some commentators that explain very simply. You know what they say? They say, you know why it's a fast day? It's very simple. Because when there's a civil war amongst the Jewish people, the north against the south, the various tribes within themselves, this is enough of a reason for us to fast. So they tell us. Which means the worst scenario situation for the Jewish people is when there is a civil war amongst the Jewish people. When there's a lack of unity and the Jewish people are fighting, this is the worst. However, this is difficult to accept. Why? Because if this is the worst thing, why do our sages say in black and white that this 23rd day of Shvat, this year, February 18th, 2020, is actually a day which gives the Jewish people a tremendous amount of merit for all generations? So, if it was such a bad thing, why do we have merit? Why was Haman? Haman should have used the month. He should have wanted to annihilate the Jewish people in this month of Shvat, because the Jews annihilated themselves in this month. So he'll just finish the job. He'll just finish the job. In one of the comment sections on my series on anti-Semitism, so there was some Nazi that wrote in the comment section that he did his math, and it can't be that 6 million Jews were killed in World War II. But he has accepted upon himself and others to finish the job. That was one of the comment sections in my class on anti-Semitism 2020 vision. Okay, so this would have been a great time for Haman to finish off the job. You know, the Jews killed 70,000. We'll just finish the job for them. Let's look at what the Talmud says. The Talmud in Sanhedrin 103b tells us an amazing thing. Talmud asks, I don't get it. The Jewish people, the tribes of Israel, were doing such a tremendous mitzvah here. In order, there is a commandment to uproot evil, to fight against evil. Our banner is we don't let the bad guys win. So what's going on? Why did the good guys fall? 58,000 people. The first round, 40,000 of the tribes of Israel. Second round, 18,000. Benjamin kills. Why do the good guys lose? And the Talmud tells an amazing answer. You know why they lost? They lost because they got all hot. They got all zealous about a sin, a transgression, when it came to a man and a fellow man. We know that in the Torah there are two types of commandments. There are commandments that have to do people with other people, men with other men, women with women. And there are commandments that are between man and God, women and God, people and God, whatever you want to say. So the Talmud tells us an amazing lesson in life. These tribes of Israel, they were doing a great thing, that's true. But where were they? Why were they slumbering? Why were they sleeping? When it came to the fact that at this time, where they're going to war, because there was a transgression against people, where have the Jewish people been when there was a transgression against God? During this whole time of the judges, there was the idol of Micha that existed in the land of Israel. People were worshiping this foreign idol of Micha. Not only were they worshiping it, believe it or not, it was only the center for the worship of the idol of Micha was 3 kilometers away from the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the tabernacle in Shiloh. 3 kilometers. Can you imagine that? Imagine you have, it's a little bit like the old city today, but that's, from a lack of choice. You have the most holy place, the Temple Mount, and, a few blocks after that, you have places of idol worshiping all around the old city. So I can't believe it, like, so close and yet so far. So that's why the Jewish people did a great thing to go against the tribe of Benjamin and to uproot evil and immorality. That was a great thing that they did. However, that same fervor that they had when it came to a transgression against people, this Levite man and his wife from the tribe of Judah, they did not show the same zealousness, fervor, when it came to a desecration of God's name, where this idol worshipping of Micha is taking place right underneath their nose. So that's why they fell. Not because they were not doing the right thing. That's why they fell. So, what happens here? We can deduce from this Talmud an amazing lesson. What is this day? February 18, 2020, 23rd of Shvat. Is it a happy day? Sad day? It's both. On one hand, it's a sad day because of the fact that the good guys fell. The tribes of Israel that went out to fight against immorality, sexual immorality, they fell. 58,000 of them fell. That's enough a reason that it's a sad day. On the other hand, the fact that they agreed to go out and fight and uproot and eradicate this behavior is a tremendous merit for the Jewish people for all ages. So it's a mixed day. You know, a person, us, we're mixed. You know, we're mixed. We have a good inclination and we have a bad inclination. Question is, sometimes the bad inclination wins, sometimes the good. So we're like mixed. So it's a day that there's a mix, a tremendous mix. It's a day of merit, as we see clearly in the words of our sages in Esther, in the story of Purim. On the other day, it's a fast that these righteous people that went out to fight, they fell. Why did they fall? The Talmud tells us because they did not have the same zealousness when it came to transgressions against God. Now, one might say, well, does this say it black and white in other books? Yes, of course it does. It's not only something that one can deduct from the Talmud, but it says straight out. Because of course the Talmud does not bring in the source that this is a day of happiness. It does not bring in that. So where does it say it straight out? So here we have some sources here. It says the following in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 38. It says, look at the tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel were zealous because of immoral sexual behavior. God says to the Jewish people, you had tremendous amount of zealousness for immoral sexual behavior against the tribe of Benjamin, but you did not have any zealousness when it came to the idol of Micha, and therefore you fell 3 times before the tribe of Benjamin. The first time 40,000, the second time was 18, third time was 30 people in the various tribes of Israel. And it did not stop until the Jewish people repented. What exactly was the repentance? We will see shortly. So we see the same line of the Talmud in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Now, in a commentary on the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 38, it says the following, that on the 23rd day of the month of Shvat, this year, February 18th, the Jewish people, the Jewish tribes fell before the tribe of Benjamin. Why? Because of the fact that they were zealous for the transgression of Lotin Af, which means that a person has to be moral when it comes to sexual behavior. Ve'al pesel micha lo kanu. And they were not zealous for the prohibition of worshiping idols. And therefore they fasted. They fasted. We're not talking about what it says in the Code of Jewish Law. If you look in the book of the Judges, the Jewish people, one of the steps we know for a person to repent was to fast. So he's not talking about what it says in today's Code of Jewish Law. He's talking about historically what happened, that they did repent. once again, what exactly was the repent, we shall see. The last is the book Megillat Ta'anit, which brings out dates of happiness and dates of sorrow for the Jewish people. One of the commentators, in a book called Divrei Ta'anit, the words of a fast, on page 216, he brings down this question in black and white. Straight out. Is this a happy day? He brings in the sources that we see it's a happy day, and he brings in the sources that this is a day of sorrow. This is the first source that we have which he asked the question. We could deduce from the Talmud that this day is mixed, that the Jewish people, if they did not have the sin of the idol of Micha, they would have been victorious. It would have been a day of happiness, that this type of behavior of Benjamin would have been destroyed and uprooted. So, but that's a deduction. But here it's black and white. And he says the following: how could it be that on one hand we have sources that say this is a day of sorrow, on the other hand we have sources that this is a day of joys? And he says very simple. He makes it so simple. We are upset that the 58,000 people of the tribes of Israel fell before the bad guys, the tribe of Benjamin. On that we have sorrow. On the other hand, this was a tremendous merit for the Jewish people for all times, that the fact that they got off of their blanks and got up and fought. For example, time of Hanukkah, we all know that they had enough oil for one day. So why is it 8 days? It should be 7 days. They had enough oil for one day. So the miracle was 7. No, there was a miracle in itself that the Jews got up off their blanks and went to fight. That was in itself a miracle. So that's what he says straight out. It's a double whammy type of day. You know, I was thinking when I was going through this, it's really like our times in Israel. If you notice in Israel, on the 4th day of the month of Iyar, we have Memorial Day for the soldiers that fell. And as the day progresses, you know, you can listen to the radio and hear all these stories about, wives that lost their husbands, and heroism, and people that were killed. And then all of a sudden, at 8 o'clock in the evening, Independence Day! That's exactly what we're talking about over here. This is hitting it on the nail. On the 4th day of the month of Iyar, we have Memorial Day. Everyone's sitting around crying. And then, as the day finishes and the sun sets, woo, fireworks and celebrations, right? Because the Day of Independence is a day, it has two issues to it. On one hand, we have the sorrow of these tremendous souls that put their lives on the line for us, for the Jewish people, and for the land of Israel, and for the Torah. On the other hand, thank God. We have, thank God, the land of Israel was given back to the Jewish people. So it is a day of two opposites, but that's life. That's really life. There's in the Code of Jewish Law, what happens if a person receives an inheritance? And then somebody dies, and he's getting an inheritance. What blessing do you say? The truth is, you say two blessings. On one hand, we feel sorrow for this person, a relative of ours that passed away. So we have to say the blessing of God. You are the judge of truth. Baruch Dayan Emet. On the other hand, we say at the same time, Shechianu. Thank God for coming to this time. I don't understand. You just said, you're just mourning this person, and you're now saying, Shechianu, thank you for bringing me. Yes, that is life. It has two sides. To every coin, there are two sides. So that's an amazing, amazing words of the Divrei Ta'anit. Looking at the situation and seeing, on one hand, the black, the sorrow, on the other hand, seeing the good, the light in this action. It's a day which has, both powers working, going different directions. Okay, now, next point. There's an amazing words of our sages. It appears in Midrash Rabbah, in the portion of Toldot. It's 65:16. 65, chapter 65, paragraph 16. Amazing thing. It tells us the following. Listen this. Put that seatbelt on. An amazing lesson. It says in our sages' words, what does it mean in the Torah that Isaac's words, that the voice, when he sent out Esau to bring him a dinner and receive the blessings, and then Jacob receives an order from his mother, Rebecca, to go out and, she'll prepare a meal, and he puts on this, costume, trick or treat, and he goes in front of his father. So Isaac says an amazing sentence. The voice I hear in front of me is the voice of Jacob, but the hands that I feel are the hands of Esau. What does that mean? I'll tell you. Once I was in a class with Shlomo Karlbach, and he asked this. What does it mean? He says that the ideal for a Jew is to take away the hands. In order to be a complete Jew, you have to take also the hands away from Esau. That's a complete Jew. Not just somebody that has a voice. You also have to take away the hands, the power of the nations. You have to take that away so you're not destroyed. And this we're going to see right now. Where did he get that from? Well, he got it straight from the words of our sages, because it brings down this verse that the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. What is this talking about? And our sages give a few answers. One of the answers is, this verse is talking about the time of the Jewish people fighting against the tribe of Benjamin when they tried to commit immoral sexual acts. That's what it's talking about. So a major commentator on the words of Midrash Rabbah, of this source of ours, is the Tiferet Zion. Listen to his words. An amazing. Have this engraved on our hearts. This is what he says. Here's the commentator, the Tiferet Zion. He said, what does this verse mean? I'll tell you what it means. The voice is the voice of Jacob. What's the voice of Jacob? The Jewish people did a great thing at the time of this transgression. In the time of the judges, in the area of Benjamin, the Jewish people that went to fight against them, they did a great service with their voice. What did they do with their voice? They said, cursed is one. They gave a curse. Anybody that will give their daughters to the tribe of Benjamin. They said you're not allowed to get married to the tribe of Benjamin after this type of act, immoral act. And after refusing to hand over the perpetrators of these tremendous transgressions, homosexuality, and also rape, gang rape, they said no one is allowed to give their daughters over to marry anyone in the tribe of Benjamin if this is their type of actions. So that was the blessing of the voice of Jacob. But what about the continuation of the verse? And the hands are the hands of Esau, Jacob's brother. What's this? Listen to what he says. It's an amazing thing. The hands that avenged this couple's, what was done to this couple in the town of Benjamin, this is using the hands of Esau in a proper way to fight against evil and to sanctify God's name. That are the words, the eternal words of the Tiferet Zion. That's the idea. The voice is the voice of Jacob. When they announced that no one is allowed, they made an oath that no one is allowed to give their daughters over to marry members of the Benjamin tribe. That's number one. And they took the hands of Esau and they used it for the worship of Hashem, worship of God. And when they turned it to vengeance against these perpetrators of these immoral actions, that's the completion. You need both. You need, as the rabbi would always say, Rabbi Kahana, you need a Jewish fist attached to a Jewish head or a Jewish voice. And then in the book, the Mordechai Avram book, on page 65 to 66, he says amazing lessons. Listen to what he says. Number one, Isaac taught us that there are times in history when the voice of Jacob is not enough. One needs to utilize the hands of Esau. And that was the case. That was the case of the Jewish people, the tribes of Israel that went to battle against the tribe of Benjamin. And not only that, it's not a one-time deal. In every generation, he writes in this book, Mordechai Avram book, he writes, in every generation, when we are witnessing that there is an attempt to induce within our communities immoral sexual behavior, dress, speech, we must not only rely on the voice of Jacob, but sometimes when we have no choice, we must also utilize the hands of Esau and go out to fight. To fight against this immorality. Rabbeinu point number 2. Haman understood that the 23rd day of Shvat, this year, February 18th, has a tremendous merit. There would be no chance against the Jews. The fact that the Jews got up and went to fight against immoral behavior, sexual behavior, there is no chance to defeat the Jews during this month. How much more so on this day, the 23rd, February 18th. Rabbeinu Yonah writes in his work, classical work, Sharei Tshuva, The Gates of Repentance, he writes there that every person is obligated to stand up and try to disrupt, protest against any attempts to leading the Jewish people off the path of decency and morality and modesty. Every Jew is responsible, yes, to cause a machloket, to cause disputes, to protest. Unity at all costs? No way. In the same vein, the book Yoreh Hakima shows us translated the ways of the sages, of the intelligent, knowledgeable. Here's what he writes in his book Yoreh Hakima, on page 174. The Jews in the times of Joshua and the times of the judges were on a tremendously high spiritual level. Though there were no kings to put fear into their hearts, and there was no kingdom to put the fear of God into their hearts. You know, you have a king that's fearful. You have a kingdom. The Jewish people were on a tremendously high level. We see that during this whole period of Joshua and the judges, these 100 and somewhat years, there was no immoral behavior almost. What is told to us in this book of Judges on chapters 19 and 20, this was an exception to the rule. Not only that, even though there was no king at this time, and there was no kingdom, and everyone still lived a tranquil life, people were not afraid. Even though there was no system there that you would think would put the fear in people, people would be able to do whatever they want because there's no system here. There's only people that are judges. But who's afraid of a judge? You have to get to a judge first. But until you get to a judge, there's no system out there. So even so, he writes the following. Even though this was an exception to the rule, look at the response of the Jewish people. A tremendous spot. This was an amazing response of the Jewish people to eradicate evil. That's what he writes over here. This is a tremendous, merit to the Jewish people that during this period of time they did not need a kingdom. They did not need a king in order that they would behave properly. And it was only a few exceptions to the rules, like this case. And even in this case, look at the response of the Jewish people. They got off their blanks and they got up and they went to fight. And even though they lost the first round, they kept on going. God said, keep on going. And they lost the second round. They asked God, said, keep on going. Eventually, good is victorious over evil. Another possible contradiction. Source 1 is our Esther Rabbah, the words of our sages, 7:11. Remember that. We see that the time of Shvat has a tremendous merit for the Jewish people. Why? Because they fought, number one, against immorality by what happened at the community of the tribe of Benjamin, and also they fought against the idol worshipping of Micha. Woo! What? Say what? Didn't we quote the Talmud? Talmud tells us that the reason why the Jewish people fell because they didn't fight. So comes the Anav Yosef. An amazing answer. Listen to this. Listen to this. It seems like there's a contradiction here. This source of our sages in the time of Purim, they're telling us that there were two merits to this month. One was fighting against sexual immorality, and the other one was fighting against idol worshipping, the idol of Micha. But the Talmud in Sanhedrin 103b told us that that's why the Jewish tribes fell to the tribe of Binyamin, because they did not go out and fight and to eradicate this idol worshipping. It was more important for them, transgressions, people against people, and not people against God. So the answer of the Anav Yosef is amazing. He says, listen, the Jewish people fell 3 times to the tribe of Benjamin. The tribes of Israel fell 3 times to the tribe of Benjamin. This was all before the 23rd day of Shvat. This year, February 18th, 2020. This was all before that. But what happened was, as we know, that a commandment, if a person does a mitzvah, a commandment, this will lead to other commandments. You do one good deed, it will lead to more good deeds. You do another. It keeps on rolling. So he says the following. What the Torah is telling us, that the Jewish people fell 3 times. This was all before the 23rd day of the month of Shvat. But then we're told that before the last battle, the 3rd battle, the Jewish people did a tremendous amount of repentance. they cried, they fasted, etc. What were they repenting about? They were repenting about their lack of action when it came to a transgression against God, a desecration of God's name by the fact that the idol of Micha exists within our midst. So, on the 23rd day of the month of Shvat, they decided to correct that transgression also. That's why there is no contradiction. What the Talmud is telling us is before the 23rd day of Shvat that the Jewish people fell because of the fact that they did not protest against the idol worshipping of Micha. And the 23rd itself, what it says in Esther Rabbah, this is talking about after they repented and fasted, etc., and cried their eyes out, they accepted upon themselves to repent and to fight against and try to eradicate the idol of Micha. So there is no contradiction. We have a question here. How is it possible that if the people of Israel, the tribes of Israel, were participating in such a great mitzvah to eradicate and to erase this immoral behavior, eradicate evil in the world, a tremendous mitzvah? If we're told that, so how could it be? Because we have a concept in the Talmud that if a person is immersed in performing a commandment, no evil will happen to him. So this question is asked by the commentator on the Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, on the tractate of Sukkah, named the Yafeh Mareh. He asked this question. And he says very simply, you know why? Because it's not so simple. It's true that the tribes of Israel were participating in a tremendous commandment to eradicate and remove evil from their midst. On the other hand, as they were performing this commandment, they were neglecting the commandment to uproot foreign idol worshiper. They were making a statement that it's more important for us when it comes to when people are hurt than when the name of God is desecrated, and that is not allowed. We have to be on two legs. Both, we have to be zealous for our fellow men, and we have to be zealous also for the honor of God. So therefore, that's why if you are immersed in a commandment, how did they fall? Why did 58,000 Jews die? You told us they're doing a tremendous commandment by eliminating evil, uprooting evil. The answer is very simple. That there was a contradiction to their actions. If it's so important for you to eradicate evil, so why is the evil of idolatry still existing? There's a contradiction to that, to their enthusiasm. So that's an important lesson to remember. You know, a lot of times people have actions, and there's different sides to their actions. Some are positive and some are negative. That's exactly what happened here. And therefore, in such a circumstance, when there's a contradiction to a person's actions, when he shows on one hand how zealous he is when it came to this killing this woman, but he's not zealous when it comes to the honor of God's name, as idol worshipping is allowed. So it's a contradiction. If there's a contradiction, the commandment will not protect you all the way. Another possible answer is the following: that there's a tremendous merit for a person to die while committing a commandment. And the reason why they died is not because the commandment did not protect them, not at all. They would have died anyways. because their time had come. And only a few are able to end their lives while performing a commandment. So it's not to degrade a person that they fell. It's exactly the opposite. It was their time to die anyways, these 58,000 people. They were so great that the great God works it out that they pass away while they're performing a commandment. This is the words in Tractate Shabbat of Rabbi Yossi. I pray that I will have a share in people that pass away as they're doing a commandment. There were many, many great people that merited that they passed away while doing a commandment. So, last but not least, another lesson here is the Tana Devei Eliyahu, the book, on chapter 11. It tells us an amazing thing, that God was about to destroy the world. When God saw what the tribe of Benjamin was doing with their sexual immorality, God wanted to destroy the world, not just the Jewish people, the world. So thank God the tribes of Israel went and they saved the Jewish people by the fact that they got up and fought against this, because God was about to destroy the world because of this immoral behavior. But it tells us that who's responsible? The leaders of the Jewish people, the court system, the Sanhedrin in that time. They are responsible. Why? Because instead of getting up and going each day to a different community and speaking and strengthening Jews in their Torah performance, commandments, learning, and in their derech eretz, their manners, their characteristic traits to perfect them, they didn't want to bother, and they just did their household chores. That's what Elijah the prophet is telling us. That really, the tragedy here is that the people responsible for 70,000 people falling are the leaders of the Jewish people that made no effort to teach the Jewish people the proper path of the righteous. These were responsible. And folks, everyone has to look in the mirror. We have to look. I have to look in the mirror. It's not just, we could blame it on a judge or on a court or on leaders, but no, everybody, the Talmud in the Tractate of Sabbath tells us that everybody has a certain influence. Somebody might have influence on his wife or their husband. Someone has an influence on one of their kids. We all have some type of influence. And if we do not utilize that influence to try to perfect that person who respects us and who will listen to what we were saying, then we are also guilty of whatever crimes go down in our communities, in our country. That's the idea here. So I'm going to summarize about 6 lessons that we learn today's class. Lesson number 1. All of us have to be zealous in all categories. Not when it comes to commandments that are connected to people, then we're flying high. But when it comes to commandments connected to God, we're nowhere to be found. So we have to be zealous for both. If you ever see the 10 Commandments, there are 5. 5 of the first 5 are transgressions against God, and the last 5 are transgressions against human beings. So you have they're on the same level, they're on the same wavelength. We have to be zealous for both categories. That's lesson number 1 for us. On the 18th of February, that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. There is a tremendous obligation and a tremendous merit to try to eradicate any sexual immoral behavior. If you could protest, if you could demonstrate, if you could speak to people, whatever it is, every one of us has that obligation. and a tremendous merit if we're able to try our best, first with ourselves, correcting ourselves, of course, and then others, because you can't correct others if we ourselves are lacking. Number 3, there are issues in life, or there are commandments that precede Jewish unity. Unity, yes, but not at all cost. Lesson number 4 from this day. We have an obligation to influence others to be righteous. Somebody has influence over one person, so influence that one person. The Zohar Kadosh writes that it's worthwhile for a person to come to this world for 70 years, and he or she succeeded in bringing somebody back to Judaism, back to their roots. It was worth all those 70 years, even though we might have done a lot of mistakes. If we were influenced one person, that's a tremendous merit. So we have the obligation to influence others, even if it's one person. Lesson number 5. The power of a commandment does not always protect us if there are contradictions in our behavior. As we discussed, why did the good guys lose here 3 times? Because there was other parts of their behavior which were lacking, blemished. And last but not least, it is a tremendous merit for a person to pass away while he or she was performing a commandment. I just want to take this time, and speaking of influence and a person that tries her hardest to eradicate evil and to strengthen justice and good and Torah, I just want to say that the series that I've been doing, the 3-part series on Anti-Semitism 2020, a lot of those videos come from my dear friend, palmtreeofdevorah.blog.com. That's one word. Palm tree, that you know how to spell, Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H, blog.com. And that website is an amazing website. I got some of those videos off her, and she gets an HT, a hat tip to that. And also go visit that website, because as I said, it's an amazing, just to read what she's writing out there, the words of truth, and the influence that, God willing, with God's help, that she has. It's a tremendous thing to look over every day. Stop by that blog and strengthen yourself in the fight against evil. Good week to one and all.